Visit then this soul of mine, pierce the gloom of sin and grief, fill me radiancy divine, scatter all my unbelief, more and more thyself display, shining to the perfect day. Amen. To follow Jesus is to know the end of the story. To walk in the ways of the Lord is to know where it will end and where is our ultimate home. To follow the path of the prophets is to recognize that at some point we are on a collision course with the status quo. And to say we are Christian is to place our trust, however thin and fragile at times, in the one who takes our very humanness, the one who takes the very brokenness of this world, the very brokenness of our lives, and transfigures it to all that is dazzling white, such as none on earth can bleach it. The evangelist Mark did not meet my altar guild director's mother when he wrote that, but I digress. The first reading today from 2 Kings begins at the end. Now, when the Lord was about to take Elijah up to heaven in a whirlwind, our story starts by saying that Elijah will be transported into heaven in a tornado. Never accuse the Lord of burying the lead. Now, it might be helpful to give some of us some background and context to this story. Elijah is the elder prophet of a whole crew of prophetic types in the northern kingdom in the 9th century BC. Perhaps they needed so many because the leadership of their realm were a despicable lot and did evil in the sight of the Lord. Elijah had a disciple named Elisha. Now, folks probably got them confused because of their similar names and the same line of work. They might have been like father and son, though their kinship was not from blood but a shared devotion to God. And Elisha walked with Elijah in the days before God took him up in a whirlwind. Elijah seemed to try to leave this young disciple behind. Yet Elisha would say, "As the Lord lives, and so as you yourself live, I will not leave you." Now, maybe that was out of anxiety for his own future. Maybe it was out of devotion to Elijah. 3 times Elisha vows to remain. And then Elijah is taken away by the chariots of fire from this broken and sinful world. And Elisha remains faithful. He grieves, he tears his garments in two, but as the story continues, he picks up Elijah's mantle, which had fallen to the ground. This story used to be read on Ascension Thursday as the Old Testament lesson. The story of the passing of the mantle from Elijah to Elisha. This window here in the chantry illustrates the story of the Ascension for us. And the idea of that story being read on Ascension Day is that as Jesus ascended into heaven, the mantle of proclaiming the gospel, of being Christ's hands and feet in the world, passed to us. And so Elisha picks up the mantle. He parts the Jordan River, as Elijah did, and he carries on the work of a prophet, following in the footsteps of his not dead but rather transfigured mentor. We follow Christ who bids us follow me. We follow Christ who bids us to stay with him in the Garden of Gethsemane, in a place of fear and loneliness and anxiety. And we follow the one who himself promises to never leave us or forsake us. This morning, the there are flowers given in the church in honor of Absalom Jones. Absalom Jones was the first black priest in the Episcopal Church, the first priest of African descent in the Episcopal Church. Born a slave and held captive in Delaware, he earned his freedom and fought his way to the priesthood in the Episcopal Church and led St. Thomas Episcopal Church, which is still thriving to this day in Philadelphia. And just this last week, the church remembered another remarkable saint, a modern-day saint, Josephine Margaret Bakita. She was born around 1869 in a village in Darfur, now in western Sudan. Her father was reasonably prosperous and well-respected, and he was the brother of the village chief. Sometime around the age of 8, she was seized by slave traders. Over the course of 12 years, she was sold 5 times and then finally given away. Bakita was not the name she received from her parents at birth. It is said that the trauma of her abduction caused her to forget her own name. She took one given to her by her slavers, Bakita, Arabic for lucky or fortunate. In 1883, Bakita was bought in Khartoum by the Italian vice consul, who treated her kindly, they say, and did not beat or punish her. 2 years later, the family escaped from a besieged Khartoum and traveled back to Italy. In 1888, her owners returned to Sudan, but she was left in the care of a religious order in Venice. There, she was cared for and instructed by the sisters. Bakita encountered Christianity for the first time, though she said she always knew the presence of God, saying, "Seeing the sun, the moon, and the stars, I said to myself, who could be the master of these beautiful things? And I felt a great desire to see him, to know him, and to pay him homage." In 1890, she was baptized with the names Josephine Margaret and Fortunata, which is the Latin translation for the Arabic Bakita. And she eventually took vows as a nun. During her 4 decades as a nun in Italy, she was in frequent contact with the local community. Her gentleness, calming voice, and ever-present smile became well known as she accompanied others on their journeys with Christ, as she herself believed she was always accompanied by God, even in the most extreme trials. Her special charisma and reputation for sanctity were noticed by her order and made her famous throughout Italy. Her last years were marked by pain and sickness, but she retained her cheerfulness because she knew she would finally see God and pay him homage face to face. She died on February 8th, 1947, and for 3 days her body lay on display while thousands of people came to pay their respects. Today, Bakita is venerated as a modern African saint and as a statement against the brutal history of slavery. She has been adopted as a patron saint of Sudan and of human trafficking survivors. Her legacy is one that reminds us that with God, transformation is possible through and despite suffering. Her life symbolizes for all of us the possibility of finding inspiration and meaning in the one who promises not to leave us comfortless, but in Jesus promises to be with us to the end of the ages. I believe that her life and our very lives contain gospel truths. In a culture that puffs up each of us to the myth that I alone can fix this, or I earned it, or I pulled myself up, Christianity counters that we are inextricably linked to each other, bound together. Again and again, sent out 2 by 2, a community of saints across time and place, working together for the mission of Christ. The life of faith is never just a solo activity. And the fate of the church never rests on one person. We are incomplete without one another. When we hear the story read the stories read today out of the Common Lectionary, and we stand in awe before the transfigured Christ, we do so with millions of others around the world. When we come to the altar, we do so with the saints and the nameless faithful of every generation. I don't understand the whirlwind or the chariots or the parting of the Jordan, but somehow I know it's true. Not everything that is real can be explained. And awe is a faithful response to the presence of God. One thing I do know is that those who have been most tormented by others in the depths of human sinfulness have seen this chariot that took up Elijah, have seen this hope of a promise of a heavenly kingdom in the next life as well as on earth in this life. There is a hymn that speaks to this. There is a hymn of those who have been kidnapped from their homes in Africa. The words of those ripped from their land, packed like cargo, and sold with the same care and dignity that one gives a bag of animal feed. That hymn is "Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, Coming Forth to Carry Me Home." And that hymn has been handed out to you this morning, I think. And together now we are going to sing that hymn. The congregation will all join in the refrain, and the choir will sing two verses of it. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. It is an audacious thing for us to borrow these words of this spiritual, sung by enslaved, free, and freed black folk. These are the ones who saw Elijah's chariot and the promise of crossing the Jordan to both a literal land of freedom and a heavenly realm free from sin and brokenness, free from hatred and prejudice, free from illness and pain, free from literal slavery and systems of slavery of body, mind, or spirit. Those precious children of God found the words to prophesy that God would carry them and us to home, on earth as it is in heaven even. Heaven may be where we fix our eyes, but it is on earth where we live and where we follow Christ, and where we are Christ's hands and feet. We haltingly proclaim that our final home is in God, in our God, the one who never leaves or forsakes. This is our hope, and it has the power to transfigure our lives in this life, as well as in the age to come. As we prepare to once again enter this Holy Lent, may we trust in the promises and follow the ways of the one coming forth to carry us home. Amen.